With Artfight fast approaching, there is just a week left to get all the reference sheets, and I have personally joined Team Comedy this year out of the 3 teams, which means that I had to dress up for the occasion. I have hundreds of OCs, and as much as I would love to put as many of them on Artfight as possible, I already had about 20, and I already had to eliminate 3 of them. I left a dozen of them alone because the reference sheets were already updated a few years ago, but the ones that I have highlighted are what I'm going to be specifically doing reference sheet updates for in this video. But who are the others? Starting with my main channel mascot, Sona, that also has a Fursona, and a mini Sona is going to be up on Artfight just for fun. Then we have a comfort character of mine, Spice the Protogen, a character that I did not expect to adore, and many of you also seem to adore in many of the shorts that I've made with animations. Then we have Maru, who's another comfort character of mine, who has stickers and flowers. They are just a precious little bean, and I love their giant fluffy tail that could be used as a pillow. Then we have the Void, which is associated with my YouTube channel, just for fun, in case you wanted to draw this chaotic voice of negativity. Then we also have Luxus, the Night Terror Jack-in-the-Box clown demon, just for anyone who wanted to draw more jestery-like creatures for Artfight. Then we have my protagonist for my webcomic, The Dawn of Gales, Vixie. I updated her reference sheet earlier this year, but I definitely wanted to update that for Artfight. Next we have Dangel, who is a half-demon, half-angel character for a webcomic that I put on extreme hiatus and reworks called Twilight of Serpents, which I'll eventually get back to after The Dawn of Gales. And then we have Reincarnated, my Undertale alternate universe. We have Impact, who is my version of Sans, and his brother Dart. These guys have gone through the reworks multiple times if you've seen the past videos, so I've already reworked them a dozen times. I do not need to update the reference sheets any further, as I'm satisfied with where they are now. But characters that don't belong to any worlds belong in Nexium, which is a world of worlds. Calypso here was designed by my best friend, and I reworked their reference sheet a couple of times, and I had given them a brother named Archer to kind of explore the vast portals and floating islands of Nexium, just so I had a point of perspective when writing out the story. Cammy is another skeleton, a part of Nexium. They have sort of a hybrid genetic to them that I'm exploring a bit more, and their boyfriend, Cove, who is another character that, though their personalities and the way that they kind of work are still a work in progress, that is the fun of Nexium. We also have Grey. I used to have another character, but I decided to pull them from it because they just weren't as fully developed as these 3 skeletal characters, but all of their lore is up on Artfight to read. Then we have Stardrop, who is sort of a third animatronic for the Sundrop and Moondrop animatronics, just for fun. And then the last character that we'll have here before I get into the redesigns of the others is Peachy, who's just my digital circus OC that I decided to add when I wanted to just kind of figure what would it be like if I got sucked into the digital circus. Moving on to the characters that have redesigns for this year. These guys are all firstly going to be a part of the Dawn of Gales, and then a handful of other OCs sprinkled throughout. I had worked so diligently on these ones in particular because even though I'm not adding all the characters to Artfight, I have many of the characters for the Dawn of Gales in their reboot works. As I mentioned in a previous video when I redid Vixie's reference sheet, many of these characters desperately needed references updated because their designs and their oldest reference sheets are from like 2019 and 2020. And even when I did update a few of them to match at the pace, when I put the comic on hiatus about 2 or 3 years ago, I realized that these characters desperately needed updates to their designs, and some of the characters that didn't have proper reference sheets and just 1 or 2 images really needed the works before I showed them off in the comic. With Acorus here, Acorus is an integral character that, as Vixie begins her journey, she meets them and they stick around for the longest for their journey. When I had designed Acorus, initially their design was actually a fursona for my husband, but I quickly changed that, same for how Vixie is no longer a fursona of mine, they are a proper OC. Acorus' story is simply that they work for their uncle in a blacksmith shop because they had lost both of their parents to an accident. Nothing super spoilery for the story, this is just general information that right at the beginning gets explained when Vixie and Acorus get reintroduced to each other after a little oops when Acorus finds her collapsed in the Crystal Cave's mines when he was fetching materials for his uncle. Both of them share a little light bluff about who they really are, Acorus explaining that he's a busy blacksmith shop owner, and Vixie boasting that she is a guardian of magic, and both of them end up getting caught in their lies shortly thereafter by the next morning. because they both live in the same town of Oakenheart, I thought it would be fun to kind of shift their design a little bit, because something that someone pointed out to me about all of my old furry characters is that many of them, their ears look like feathery wings sticking out the side of their head, and they do look a bit flat. Additionally, some of the design adjustments for their proportion to help kind of balance their silhouettes for shape language definitely needed the works. I also decided to adjust that super short haircut and give them a little bit more of a mullet, because eventually that turns into a full lion's mane, like how their uncle's is. It'll eventually wrap around their face so that their fuzzy little cheeks will disappear. A character that I did not initially have on Artfight, who does have a reference sheet, but I just never bothered putting it up there, is Vixie's teacher, Dax. Now, Dax's initial design is almost a weird Lost Media kind of thing, so I had adopted them from somebody on Instagram. The username escapes me, but I think it was like Color Eevee or Colorless Eevee, but they disappeared off the face of the planet for reasons unknown. All I know is that when I went to go find their initial reference sheet, I couldn't find it in any of my DMs, and the oldest picture that I had on my old phones and tablets is gone, so all I have is the drawing that I drew of the reference sheet, but in my style, and then the most recent one when I redesigned them a few years later. But I desperately needed to fix some of the design elements. The first thing that I needed to change was removing all of the funky little eyeballs. As cool as it was to have them use floating eyeballs as their magical ancient power, I realized that it just did not fit at all with what I was aiming for more spoiler territory that I can't share in this video for the comic, but essentially being the guardian of magic did not mean that they had to have, like, strange magical floating eyeballs. Another thing is, their patterns on their fur, the tail, and the strange, weird disconnect where their mohawk turns into neck fluff, and then a random spine of fur. I had to get rid of that. It might be cool in concept for another character, but definitely not for him. Another thing with this is that for the general shape language, their face is kind of smushed inwards like a pug's, and I needed to fix that. So I had angled his face in a particular way. I had to do it at a side view and getting the hair just right. I also fixed the feathery ears thing again. All of the old designs with these characters, their ears, when I was trying to design them in such a specific style, it just really looks flat and fluffy in a way that wasn't matching to what I needed. I also decided to change the colors of the inner ear instead of this strange green to match the hair, to match the fluff of their neck fur and the lower half of their body. I decided to change up the body type, especially for the tail, because many of them, even though I don't have them called furries or anthropomorphics, even though that is what they are considered, I had changed the species name to Nokians, or unclassified, for any hybrids that are either the last of their kind or ancients. The two names that are still kind of a work in progress are for the humanoid characters that have features that are more hybridized, that look more humanoid, but there is absolutely no humans in the world of the Dawn of Gales, is Ninkos. It's still a work in progress title, but it's basically like Neko, and I can't remember the other origin of it smushed together, and then the others is for non-anthropomorphic creatures, whether they have no legs, or 3 legs, or 4 legs, or 8 legs, essentially not upright, that can have fur, scales, wings, as long as they're sentient and not feral. I had decided to call them Grovans. Still a work in progress, but it's something that I felt fit for each of them. Ferals, on the other hand, are actually what I had considered for any non-sentient, no consciousness, just fish and plants, and what I would consider prey, to keep the balance of life on the planet intact, because that was one of the things that I wanted to work out, aside from other systems that I've added, to make the world feel alive and connected. I already have an alphabet in written language for the magic that I had come up with. I also have names not only for the locations, but many of the creatures that I have in an encyclopedia that are in the works to try to fix it. I even have a currency for the system of mana paw, which is square coins with paws, and the toe beans are mana beans and puds to pay in the world, which is just silly, whimsical little lore that I'll have to elaborate more on when I cover more of the Dawn of Gales reboot in the future. The last one that I have for reference for the Dawn of Gales is a character that had not shown up in the story yet, but was very close to showing up, and that is Ziva. She is a town guard for one of the towns that Vixie and the others later on in the story visit, and I wanted a character that looked fierce, but also I wanted them to be different. Instead of every single one of the characters standing upright and anthropomorphic, or just regular old four-legged creatures, I wanted to have a lioness centaur. And when I tell you I struggled with this anatomy, I had to draw the characters in a way that was readable. So I needed a front view, a side view, and I was going to do a back view, but then I realized I was already struggling with this reference and adjusting the face shape, because initially I had given her way too big of a snout. It just didn't fit for what I needed. The same with this strange, hairdo that I had given her. She does kind of look like she has a mullet in the old one, but it was meant to just sort of be a short, kind of messy bob. Another thing with the outfit is I didn't adjust the top half as much as I could to show off that there is a little bit of sleeve attached to it, but I figured they would want to have as much movement as possible when it comes to their outfits. So for her lower garments, instead of it being stiff like metal plating, I decided to make it more obvious that it is fabric. And I had to figure out how on earth I was going to make it so that this would fit over their body, because their upper half, being anthropomorphic, kind of makes it difficult to slide on clothing. Now, of course, it could just be that she just slides it clean over by holding her hands up, but that would still be pretty difficult. So instead, I went more for a sort of belt loop system, similar to how some of my characters that have tails that wear pants have a little belt buckle so that it kind of unbuckles and they can freely move the fabric around without it interfering and overlapping too much. With Ziva, for her outfit, I also wanted to make it very clear that if she needed to, she could easily attach on the more quadruped lower half of the centaur body any belts, so that if she had to carry any weapons, it could easily be carried. And also, something that my husband helped me work on, which is totally unnecessary. I could just say it's fantasy and it's just make-believe and magic to solve this, but internally I'm sort of thinking that she has two hearts, one for the upper half and one for the lower half, because that's going to require a lot of energy in order to be able to move such a giant body, especially when trying to figure out how she would lay down and how she would sit and sleep. And I wanted to show that in the reference for anyone who did want to draw her, because I remember that last year I had already shown off some of the illustrations that others had made of her, and something that I wanted was that if anybody did draw her this year, for them to be able to see it. But there was one piece that someone had drawn with her holding a giant, I think it's called a halberd weapon, and covered in extra plated armor, so I thought that it would be very cool if anybody had any additions to it. I would leave that open to interpretation. I would love to be able to, if I had more time, add an accessories sheet, kind of like what I did for my main channel Sona, where I have alternative outfits that give ideas for people, additional weapons, or anything like that. I wanted to have that, but because it's so close to Artfight, I do not reasonably have time for it. Another thing that I will be doing is updating the little tiny thumbnails for each of my characters, because at the moment it is just a zoomed out version of the reference sheet, which doesn't give a clear picture, and I don't know if I'll have time to do chibis or just do a sort of zoomed in picture of the characters' faces. I would like to be able to utilize this last week in order to do that, and if there is any additional characters that I add to it that are not featured in this video, they will be up there on Artfight, so there is a chance that with the last few days before Artfight, I will be uploading a couple more characters. Whether it's from the Dawn of Gales or not, I'm not 100% certain, because these reference sheets are so fun, and I will be updating more of these characters for the comics, but with nearly 25 characters already up for Artfight, I figured there was enough variety, with many of them being anthropomorphic characters, some humanoid characters, and four-legged creatures. I do have cat creatures, canine creatures, but I also thought it would be fun to add a pony character. Starstorm is one of my OCs that I had designed, where the idea came to me when I thought, with all of the knowledge that I have of My Little Pony, what if I made an OC nowadays, instead of just basing it off of many of the old characters that I had already redesigned, which I do have a full video on that. It's basically my old pony Sona Crystal Dust, a male alicorn, and many of their lackeys that I had made, which was... it's a whole story and a half, but if you want to see that and more lore, there is a video that you guys can go back and watch. But for this one with Starstorm, she's just a fun, outgoing fast flyer. The idea is that she flies so quickly that her cutie mark Starstorm is kind of just to represent that she just kind of flies like a shooting star. And she has a permanent cowlick on the back left of her mane because she just does not tend to her mane very often, and her tail is sort of a messy curlicue because of just how often she flies. Her mane has just permanently fixed into this little curlicue. No matter how much she tries to brush it out, it just keeps that permanent curl. I don't know if anybody else has ever had that trouble with their hair where it just doesn't really style the way you want to, so you just leave it as is, and that's just part of it. I want to explore more of Starstorm's personality, but I just don't have the time to go into it too much. But either way, I am still happy with being able to have a full turnaround reference of her. Next we have Atlas, who's another character who I don't remember the original creator of the design, but I do know that I adore it so much. There are many of the characters that I had received as either adoptables I purchased, art trades that I had done many years ago on Instagram or DeviantArt, and I try to always, as much as I can, link back to the original creators unless they just delete all of their social medias and then I can't do anything about it. With Atlas and their design, I had made a couple of drawings of them, and I had an animation meme that I had done where I was trying to practice lip sync and motions back when I was doing more animations, but besides that, I didn't really know what I wanted to do with them. They're just a mystery, strange little fox cat creature that has a very fun pattern to them. The colors I adjusted ever so slightly because, I'm not gonna lie, when I look at their old head shape, I cringe just a little bit. I know that's the style of how I used to, but the ears looking kind of feathery with these strange flat patches and the mishmash of all of the sprinkly white and black mesh that just kind of happens, it just looks so blurry in the old one. I had to fix it. I had to update their design. And then another character that I don't have much in the way for lore is a Warrior Cats OC called Silverthorn that I made so long ago. It was back in high school when I made all of my friends at the time random Warrior Cats OCs that they never asked for and made silly little stories in my notebooks in passing from lunchtime. I don't remember any of that. I don't think I have any of it. The only thing that I do have is the old reference sheet of Silverthorn, which was just a scribble on lined paper, and then the updated one, which I don't even call this a reference. It's just a drawing that I made, which has shading and highlighting, which made me color swatching them so difficult, so I decided instead of this funky, strange gradient effect, I was just going to add different patches to their stomach and tail. And I still like the idea that their name Silverthorn comes from the fact that their fur is sort of silvery in the lighting and sharp like thorns. They also are pretty swift, and I wasn't sure if they would fall into RiverClan, but that was the best I could come up with, where they love to chase after birds to collect their feathers as just little accessories and trophies, and they just kind of help out as much as they can with hunting. I still don't know the full lore of Warrior Cats, I'm sorry. I was one of those people who binged on YouTube all of those fun little animation memes and animatics that people would post, and learned the lore that way, but I never properly got into it to reading the books or anything like that. Maybe one day I'll catch up on the full lore. Then we have Omnuk, back to the Twilight of Serpent story, which is on a full reworks, which comes after I sort out my main 3 projects. The Dawn of Gales is the top priority, along with YouTube and Nexium and Reincarnated. All of those are 2026 projects that I'm working on to make sure that I can efficiently finish them in a reasonable amount of time, even if some of them are more long-form like the Dawn of Gales. When it came to Twilight of Serpents, the main thing is that Dangel is a half-demon and angel character that doesn't feel like they belong on the earthly planes, which I still haven't come up with a proper name for, and the heavens really despise them because of their demon traits, and the demons don't really like the magical angel-y side to them, so they just don't fit anywhere. And the only other half-demon and half-angel is the serpent, which is a sort of spoiler, but at the same time, like, not anymore, because the story is changing so much as I keep developing characters for this. Omnuk is an antagonistic angel who is so arrogant that anytime they run into Dangel, one of the things that they like to do is, if you have ever clinked together metal coins or rings and they get that little ring sound effect to it, that is what they sound like with their sort of vibrations, speech patterns, because one of the fun things that I wanted for the comic is that very few creatures speak. They just... You can tell by body language, the interactions they have, any number of things. I didn't want there to be a lot of dialogue, I wanted the actions to speak the most for it. And with creatures that don't have mouths, I wanted to have fun with this. And with Omnuk, Omnuk is just such a thorn in Dangel's side that they want the cores, which are souls, for themselves to raise their ranks, because for the angels, part of their holiness that they have in this world comes down to how many souls they've protected. But they essentially keep the souls on a pedestal in their cloud kingdoms that I'm still working on fleshing out, whereas the demons, they absorb them and they utilize their powers, which is half of what Dangel can do with the fire core that they meet in their journey, so they're only borrowing the power and then they help reform them to this strange new reformed core state, where they're not quite alive, but they're not quite the spirits that they are in their core form, and many other things that, if you want more lore for this, I'd be happy to sprinkle some in if I ever come up with more angels and demons lore, but either way, if you want to draw Omnuk, have fun with the biblically accurate angel aesthetic of them and their arrogance. I had fun making all these reference sheets, and I cannot wait for Artfight. I will be putting a link in the description for my Artfight for anyone who is interested, as well as for next month. I will be compiling all of the speed paints of all of the attacks that I do for this year. I will also be adding any art that is given to me of my OCs for any attacks into a compilation to show my appreciation and show off all these amazing artists like I do every year for Artfight. And if anybody attacks me, even if you're on the same team for Team Comedy, I will be doing friendly fires and just having fun getting to attack back, because I want to put that as a priority above anything else. I may have a ton of characters bookmarked, but many of the characters can wait, so I wish everybody luck for all 3 of the teams, and I can't wait to see some of you there and in next month's video after Artfight finishes. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to join the Subscribler Squad to never miss an upload. While you wait for the next upload, check out some of the playlists. If you'd like to see your fan artwork featured in the Subscribers gallery, tag me in it, as I love getting to see what you guys can create and sharing it to others on the channel. My card link is below, and if you'd like to further support this channel with exclusive Patreon rewards, Fennec Foxes for £2 a month gets you access to all of my work-in-progress sketches. Arctic Foxes for £5 a month gets you access to exclusive Patreon-only content, art videos, and comic pages early. Red Foxes for £10 a month gets your name read out at the end of the videos, just like this. Special thank you to Frankie Jr. 13. Stay possum, subscribers.